In the frontier, fishing wasn't only for sport or recreation. A fish on your line versus no bites could be the difference between going to bed hungry or your belly full, especially during the wintertime or in areas where game was scarce. Many fishers weren't catching a floppy catfish or trout, but instead river monsters that could destroy rods and possibly injure or kill the people who caught them. Before we dive in, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. Alligator gar. Take a look at this fish. At first glance, you may not think it looks dangerous. In fact, you may think it looks kind of cute. But this picture doesn't give you the scale of this beast. Here's a photo from 1910 that perfectly illustrates how massive this creature was. And here's a view of the inside of its mouth. Huge, right? The alligator gar is a prehistoric fish that is one of the largest freshwater fish in North America. How big are we talking? A male can reach 6 feet, or 1.8 meters, in length. Some gars are reported to reach up to 10 feet, or over 3 meters. Their weight can go above 300 pounds, or 136 kilograms. You're definitely going to need a bigger boat for this one. It has 2 rows of teeth, and they are like skewers. If you try to stick your arm in its mouth, say goodbye to it. It's not only great at offense, but defense as well. Its interlocking anodized scales can resist knives and even bullets. It's a true tank of the deep and one that many fishermen did not take lightly. So why would a frontiersman bother catching this beast? It's simple. It was delicious. If you caught one, you were fed for a good while, and its meat was good, tasting like chicken. Eat gar fresh or smoked, and you'd love what you eat. Not only that, but its scales were used as jewelry, as weapons, or shields by the indigenous tribes. Plus, they were huge, and one of these bad boys could feed a group for a long time. So yes, despite the danger and potential life-threatening injuries these fish offered, it was worth the risk. So, how did one catch these beasts in the frontier era? The fishermen brought their arsenal: harpoons, heavy hooks, firearms, you name it. They would unload on the gar with rifles and gaffs, and an entire team would often work together to haul the gar to shore. It was a team effort, from the moment the fish was caught to the point where you ate it. And even after being pelted with bullets and harpoons, the gar would often still be alive. So when brought to shore, the fishers would use poles, nooses, and clubs to finish the job and avoid the swinging of tails or gnashing of teeth. Imagine not only catching this bad boy, but then hauling it and hoping you didn't die. Overall, the gar was truly a beast of the deep, but its meat was well worth it. It was sometimes worth the effort to catch something that massive. Muskellunge. Next, we have the muskellunge, and judging by this picture, it doesn't seem to be as tough or strong as the gar. And indeed, this is true. The largest muskellunge, or muskie, caught was 5 feet, 67 pounds, 1.5 meters, around 30 kilograms. It is certainly not as big as the gar. However, it still packs a wallop, and not a fish to be taken lightly. They still have razor-sharp teeth that can even slice through thin metal. If one bites you, it probably won't be a nip in the arm. It can sever tendons. In some cases, fishermen had to have their limbs amputated due to underestimating these creatures. In fact, their nickname says it all: water wolves. Like wolves, they are predatory and very territorial. They can lunge at prey at up to 30 miles per hour or 48 kilometers per hour. And if you think you're safe in your boat, think again. They can launch themselves out of the water, even putting up a fight when hooked. Some fishermen thought they triumphed when the muskie caught the line and stayed in the water, but whenever it rammed the boats, it risked capsizing and potentially becoming food for the large creature. But if you caught a muskie, you were rewarded with a delicious feast of flaky, rich meat that could feed a family for days. Again, another fish where the taste might be worth the payoff, provided you had the right tools to get these fast, sharp-toothed swimmers. So, how was the muskie caught? Frontiersmen would use steel leaders or wire tracers, which made it so the muskie could not bite through lines. They also would use hardwood rods to battle with these fish, which could fight with fishermen for over an hour. Often, fishermen had to go one-on-one with a muskie using clubs, gaffs, or spears. Some would even shoot the muskie in the head. Even when the musk was exhausted and injured, it could still thrash and maim a fisherman who let his guard down. And sometimes, not even one bullet to the head would be enough for these beasts to go down. Overall, the muskie is known as the fish of 1,000 casts for a reason. It took an experienced fisherman to even dream about catching one, and an even better fisherman to survive the bout. Blue catfish. When you think of dangerous fish, a catfish is probably not the first thing that comes to mind. Most catfish are known as bottom feeders. However, the blue catfish pictured here tells a different tale. At first, this fish doesn't appear to be dangerous. In fact, he looks like a jolly fellow, doesn't he? Well, here's another photo. Yes, this fish is giant. It can reach up to 65 inches, or 170 centimeters. And it can go up to 143 pounds, or 65 kilograms. Unlike the first two fish on this list, it's pretty docile, like all catfish are. It just wants to bottom feed, and it doesn't have razor-sharp teeth that could gnash your arms. Instead, it relies on its sheer size to be a threat. When caught, blue catfish will flee fast, which can lead to fishermen being flown off their boats, canoes flipping over, and lines quickly breaking. That left many open to other fish that were dangerous, and it still had some defenses too. Its spines could puncture deeply, and it even contained venom. Many men flew off boats and got injured or died capturing one, and even when caught, they underestimated its spines and spent days with agonizing infections. If poisoned, some would also die a few days later from the injuries. Of course, the reason why people battled these behemoths was apparent. If caught, it could give you up to 55 pounds, or 22.6 kilograms, of meat that had a mild, sweet flavor. If you were hungry, you wouldn't be for long. Some tribes would catch these fish to feed their families because of the sheer size. If you had the skills, you wouldn't go hungry. So, how did folk catch this fish? Fishing line was out, rope was in. Alternatively, they used a thick, braided line that couldn't be broken. This was then tied to a log or another strong support that was able to withstand the sudden fleeing of this creature. Also, they would often be found in holes in the river, which they retreated to when the waters fell. This made them a bit difficult to capture, as the waters were deep and murky, but the fishermen managed to do it, sometimes using their own boats as leverage to keep them away. Once these catfish gave up, fishermen would haul them to the boat slowly, hoping that the fish wouldn't get a further burst of energy. And even when caught, many men had to work together to haul it in and secure it due to the massive size of these creatures. They would have to use its gill openings and even use a noose on its tail to keep it secure and avoid its spines hitting them. And of course, some would simply club the catfish over the head. The blue catfish showed that you didn't need teeth to be dangerous. Sometimes your size was all that you needed. Northern pike. Let's go back to the fish who let their teeth do the talking. The northern pike was also considered a wolf of the water. Found in the northern U.S., this fish could grow over 4 feet, 1.2 meters, and weigh over 20 pounds, 9 kilograms, making it, and its teeth, a notable adversary for many. When we say it had teeth, however, we aren't talking about maybe a couple of chompers here and there. A northern pike could have between 300 to 700 teeth, all sharpened and ready to grab its prey with no remorse. If your finger got too close, you'd lose more than a chunk of flesh. In some extreme cases, men were ground to the bone trying to handle them, and they were also hostile. If an angler entered their domain, they would ram into the boat or play dead when caught, only to attack the fishermen when they least expected it. With any of these creatures, you should always be wary that the fish may be playing possum. But this was especially the case with the northern pike. The northern pike wasn't as desired as many of the fish. While its meat was flaky and nutritious, it was covered in bone, which meant it took a lot more time to prepare. Often, the frontiersmen would have to grind it into a fish cake or boil it off to avoid a bone getting mixed into their meat. In addition, the northern pike didn't have that much meat, enough for a family meal with some leftovers, so the payoff of the fight would not be worth it. Nevertheless, they were still desired because they were available year-round. This was convenient, especially in the winter when it would be harder to scrounge for food. Plus, their teeth could be used as saw teeth, needles, or for other uses. Some even found their teeth sharper than any knives in their cabinets. Okay, so how was this fish caught? Very similar to muskies and other big fish. However, because of their abundance, many fishermen knew the golden rule. Never put your fingers near this fish's mouth. Use long-handled hooks or wooden jaw openers to pry open their mouths to remove the hook. Some would even use cord loops to make muzzles for the pike, and even then, they would handle the pike with care, using gloves to hold it from underneath. And they knew that the pike was like a horror movie killer, where just when you thought it was dead, it would come back. So, until the pike was beheaded and gutted, they treated it like it was alive at all times. When brought to the shore, many of these pike would get a good extra club and stab in the head for good measure. The northern pike was a toothy catch that could feed you for a night, as long as you didn't feed yourself to it. The American paddlefish. Next, we have the American paddlefish, and from this photo alone, you can figure out why this fish was one to be feared. Fittingly, it was also called the spoonbill. Like the alligator gar, this fish has been around since primitive times and is gigantic. In 1916, one catch was over 7 feet, 2.1 meters, tall and weighed nearly 200 pounds, 90.7 kilograms. Like the alligator gar, it's one of the largest freshwater fish on the continent. The American paddlefish is a filter feeder, swallowing smaller life whole. As such, it doesn't have any dangerous teeth to fight against. Instead, it's equipped with its snout, which is shaped like a paddle. This paddle is nearly 2 feet of hardened bone, meaning that if it hits you, you will feel it, and then some. Many fishermen have caught a paddlefish only to be knocked unconscious with a mighty swing of its paddle. Several other fishermen retreated from their canoes when a paddlefish was caught, as its thrashing was too much. If a paddlefish swung the wrong way, it could even kill you due to the blunt force of the paddle to the head, though it was a rarity. But if you could face the paddle and live to tell the tale, the reward was worth it. Paddlefish meat didn't have any bones, minus the spine, and had a porky texture, so it was very easy to prepare compared to other fish. If you could catch a big one, it could feed a family for a long while. The oily meat also made it great for smoking, so you could hit the dusty trail with plenty of protein to survive. It wasn't just the meat, however. If you caught a female paddlefish, it may have had many roe inside of it. This made for some exceptional caviar, turning a frontier survival food into one that made you feel fancy. Sometimes a paddlefish could have so much roe in it that it could be worth hundreds of thousands in today's money. The liver was also sought after, being used as lamp oil or in lubricants. There were many other uses as well, such as its collagen-rich swim bladder. It was one of those fish that you caught for multiple uses, so as long as you didn't get hit, you had a fish. So how did you capture this creature? Besides its paddle, another challenge was that it doesn't bite into a hook. However, during spring and summertime, the paddlefish would rise, making them easy to snag or net. These paddlefish would often migrate to predictable channels during the season, so fishermen would stretch nets across narrow sections of the river to catch them. They would also use snag fishing methods, using barbed hooks to forcefully grab paddlefish. Once captured, they needed to subdue it. Not only was the paddle dangerous, but this was a slippery creature too, sometimes escaping from nets. Some fishermen would sever the gills and let the fish bleed out. This was not only a great killing method, but also improved the meat quality. Others would tow the paddlefish and then hit it with an oar when it reached ashore, tying it up and then cooking it in the process. If the fish still flapped, sometimes a club was used to knock it out for a bit and bring it back. But this was not as commonly used because it required a lot of force to knock out a creature like this. Still, the paddlefish was a worthy opponent, and many fishermen took their lumps and a blow to the head trying to subdue it. But for the meat and the value, this process was worth it. Bowfin. Next, we have the bowfin, which at first glance doesn't appear to be dangerous. The bowfish is also called a mudfish because it is found in muddy swamps and bayous. It's also referred to as a dogfish. A bowfin is very small, being up to 1 to 2 feet long, or 3.5 feet with larger females. A little over a meter in extreme situations, and it can weigh up to 20 pounds, or 9 kilograms. So, how is this a threat? Well, look at it this way. The bowfin is called a living fossil due to its design, which has remained unchanged for nearly 150 million years. You know the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? That perfectly applies to the bowfin. So, what hasn't changed with the bowfin that makes this fish particularly dangerous? First, let's see that smile. Yep, one bite from this bad boy will hurt. Did we mention it has strong jaw muscles? You come to eat it, but it may eat you if you're not careful. And once it feels threatened, it won't stop at anything to defend itself. It can also survive in areas that other fish couldn't, such as low oxygen water, making it a challenge if it's submerged to great depths. Its bimodal breathing ability, where it can use its swim bladder like a lung, means that you can't try to kill it by suffocation so easily. A fisherman may have caught a bowfin, left it out for hours, and thought it was dead. Then they reach to grab it near its mouth. The next thing they know, their hand is mangled, if it's lucky. deadly. The bowfin can have a Rasputian death too. You can club it, skin it, and it will still thrash and attack. Sometimes it will attack when you didn't even intend to fish, such as attacking traveling boaters when they get too close to one of its nests. There's a reason why this fish has managed to survive in a relatively similar state for hundreds of millions of years. Even if you did grab it, it was so slimy that it may have slipped out of your hands and back into the water. The frontier men knew to avoid this, as not only was it hard to kill, but its meat was undesired and expired quickly. So many fishermen in the frontier would just go around the bowfins rather than take the risk. However, it was a delicacy in some regions, such as Mississippi, and if cooked right, it could be delicious. If you ate it fresh, pickled the meat, or ground it up, you could have firm, flavorful meat. You could also make caviar from female bowfin, and its meat is rich in protein. Other parts of the bowfin could also be used. For example, the swim bladders could be used for glue or gelatin due to the amount of isinglass produced. And just like modern times, some frontiersmen took on the bowfin for the bragging rights. If you caught one, you may have been the talk of your group. So, how did you catch one? By knowing that you were in a fight to the death. Catch one? Subdue it immediately. Think one is dead? Give it an extra blow to the head or sever its spinal cord to make sure. Some even brought a gun to finish it off. Nothing was overkill when fighting the bowfin. Like all dangerous fish, the blowfin was one where you needed to make sure it was dead, then hit it again to make sure. And when you did kill it, it was a reminder that maybe, just maybe, your next hunt should be something a little bit easier and tastier. Longnose gar. Finally, let's end things where we started by talking about another gar. This is like if the alligator gar and the paddlefish had a baby, creating a creature that has tons of teeth and a long snout it can use for self-defense. Some long-nosed gars can be up to 6 feet and up to 20 pounds, or 1.8 meters and 9 kilograms. It's a beast of a hunter, being able to impale smaller fish with its nose and then feasting with its needle teeth. If the long nose didn't impale a fisherman, they could be punctured by its teeth and bleed out before they could get medical assistance. And like its alligator relative, the longnose has a body full of strong scales, making it hard to kill. Finally, it defends itself from predators by having roe that is poisonous. So, if you want to have some longnose gar caviar, it could be your last meal. But like its alligator sibling, it did have some white, firm meat that tasted like chicken. It was a southern delicacy where residents would make gar patties from its meat. Like the alligator gar, the long-nosed gar's bones and scales were highly valued and used as weapons or jewelry. So, how did one catch the long-nosed gar? Like its alligator relative, it did require ingenuity. Their snouts made it so that using hooks wouldn't exactly work the best, and then you had that snout to worry about. Some fishermen fought the gar using the dirtiest methods possible, like using sears and gunshots. Native Americans would bowfish them in shallow waters. See a gar's head? Whack it immediately, or you may get impaled by its nose. Traditional fishing methods include a frayed rope used as a gar lure. This rope, made from fine nylon or horsehair, would tangle in the fish's many teeth, snaring it. However, it would still be a threat, with many fishermen needing a noose or a pole to avoid getting injured by a very angry fish. Many would aim for the fish's nose, trying to break it so it wouldn't attack. However, they may find that their poles were the ones broken when all was said and done. Some also used nets, but larger gar could easily cut through them, especially when the net became loosened. Other times, the scales would become tangled in the net, meaning you had to cut it out carefully while avoiding being its next meal. And when you captured and killed the gar, it was still a challenge, even in death. The gar's scales could break your knife, so you'd better have a hammer or hatchet like you're carving into some ice. Once you had harvested its meat, however, you felt like a conqueror. The long-nosed gar is one of the toughest fish on this list, but the fishermen were willing to accept it as a challenge. These 7 fish threatened fishermen for various reasons, and they show how nature can prepare these animals for the most significant challenges. The gars were built like tanks and had their own artillery. The muskie was elusive and could bite. The blue catfish used its girth as a defense, and what a defense it was. The American paddlefish had an intense, paddle-like nose. The bowfin was a primitive fish that could survive anything you could throw at it, short of a nuclear bomb. All of these fish were dangerous in their own ways, some more than others, and required a lot of skill to catch and bring in. Even when the deed was done, the fish still posed a challenge, whether due to its body, numerous teeth, or love of playing possum. Yet the fishermen took these fish on, and many more. If they didn't, they might not have survived during a long journey because of the bountiful sustenance that these monstrous creatures had. In some cases, their family or community was dependent on their fishing skills. And like the fishermen today, some privileged fishermen hunted them for the thrill of it. And with that, we come to the close of another frontier mystery. If you've made it this far into the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. And leave a comment about these fish, whether you've ever encountered any of these fish, or if you know anyone who is a fisherman. Let us know, and we will see you again in the next video.